Okay, so I'm Mike and I hate Windows.
Hi, Mike.
I hate Windows so much, I automate everything that I can, so I don't have to touch it. I don't get filled with rage. No, we're going to be talking about event handlers in Nagios XI. Event handlers they're a way to essentially execute automated scripts, essentially. So if a host or service goes into a bad state, you can tell an event handler, go deal with this problem. I'm just going to jump right in and kind of show you an example. And this example comes from way back in my history. When I first took over the sales engineer position, we had a problem with NCPA. I'm sorry, our developers had a bug in NCPA. NCPA itself is a blameless, holy creature. Let's just get that straight right now. But NCPA on Windows would crash. And it would only crash in the worst case scenario, so like Friday, 6 p.m. So I come in on Monday, have a 9:30 demo and be like, oh, I don't have any data over the weekend. We turn our systems off over the weekend because we're a green company. That's what I would tell people. Eventually, I just got tired of waiting for a solution to it, and I just created an event handler to restart the service. So we go take a look at the core config manager, find our NCPA service here. Service status. Under the check settings, we have the event handler. And you can see this one restarts the service via WinRM. That's a whole thing we'll get into. But right now, we just forgot for a second that I actually just want to show you first. So, welcome to the post-lunch lunch and learn, where we all have food coma, or at least I do. Let's pick on SQL Server. Everyone loves picking on SQL Server. So we'll go over, not to OBS, we'll go over to our Windows machine. We'll go to services, and we're just going to turn this thing off. Oh, Jesus. Why would I do such a thing? Why? Why, God? Why? I hate Windows. So, just a thing there. Watch out for that. I've been dealing with Windows since Windows 3.0. It's going to age visibly now. Okay, secondary login, SQL Server. So this is a service that is supposed to be running, and we're going to stop it. Stop it, SQL Server. Stop it. And what we do is we force an immediate check. SQL Server is not running. It's supposed to be running. First thing I want to point out is this current checks, 1 of 5. So if you've seen in your service checks where you set a max check attempt, that's what that is. Max check attempt is kind of like it's our first line of defense against like email storms. So like if there's a blip in a service or something like that, you don't have to worry about an email going out. It'll recheck that service until it hits that number of checks, and then it'll send out a notice saying that it's down. And we want to do that. We're going to do that quickly here. We're just going to have it force a bunch of immediate checks, and we're going to get done with it. The event handler is going to get kicked off at the last check. I probably should have lowered that before I started, but here we are.
I could watch a quick update.
Hey, look, it's unchanging. It's in a stable state. So what I'm going to do, and just pay attention, I'm just going to hit this refresh button. And we're going to see SQL Server down here go to running. I didn't touch it. I didn't touch it. It's magic. I didn't have to come in here and yell at Windows because I decided to hit the start menu and start typing services. And it couldn't figure out how to search for services because, anyway, the point is my blood pressure stays down when I automate these things. And now it's fine. And it goes into a flapping state because I've been just messing around with this service all day, but whatever. So what I wanted to show you is kind of how to set these things up, some things to take into consideration when you're making an event handler. And so one of the things I was taking into consideration when making an event handler for NCPA was, if NCPA isn't running, how am I actually gonna restart it if it's not running? Like, how am I gonna get into that system? And I spoiled it earlier, it's WinRM. But you'll see in here, I also have restart the service via NCPA. Can you guess why I have restart service via NCPA created as a command?
So that you can restart MySQL server or SQL server?
So I can restart WinRM if WinRM crashes. So,
Isn't WinRM deprecated?
WMI,
Oh, WMI. is.
yeah,
Excuse me.
and turns out it wasn't deprecated. They updated WMI to have additional security on it. There's a whole thing there. I could talk about that too, because holy cow, that was some drama. I'm gonna go take a look at that command here real quick for my event handler. One of the things I like to do when creating commands is give a prefix. So like a prefix of EH, that's an event handler. Helps you find things when you don't know what they're called. So, interesting thing here. I have a little script here, a little Python script called service effector. Makes us happy. It's kind of a generic script, or more generic script. You can restart services via NCPA, via WinRM, or via SSH. Except I didn't call this one via SSH because consistency is for the birds. But all we're doing is passing a different command line to it. Let's see here, where are you? Host address via WinRM. Vector. Here it is, restart via WinRM. And then you provide username and passwords, all the good things. Let's go back to this. Actually hop into this system here real quick. User local Nagios libexec. I don't know how deeply you've delved into Nagios XI yet, but if you don't know, user local Nagios libexec is where all of the plugins are stored. And a lot of our documentation will say, yeah, just put your event handler in here and configure a command for it and away you go. I don't like that, that's messy. So I create my own little directory for it. Keeps it nice and separated because an event handler isn't a plugin. So we were looking at the service restart. Oops, I'm not allowed to do that, excuse me. There we go. So that thing that we saw earlier where there was the max check attempts of 5, that is referred to as the state type. So when a service goes into, say, a critical or a warning state, hasn't reached its max check attempts, that's called a soft state type. So if something's in a soft critical state, it's going to retry that service check to make sure that it's actually down. Until it gets to the max check attempts, and if it's still in a critical state, then you're in a hard critical state. Typically, you only want your event handlers to kick off on a hard critical, sometimes hard warning state. Either way, you want to make sure they're done checking.
Are you saying that the event handler will fire after the first check fails?
The event handler will fire on any state change. That's why I call this out. You go from okay to warning, event handler fires off. Goes to check it the second time and turns out that threshold might have moved to critical. Event handler fires off because now it's in a critical state. And the really tricky one is critical back to okay. Event handler fires off. You don't want to restart services when they start. because they're already started. But just a little thing to watch out for, because if you're going to be doing things like rebooting VMs or something like that, you want to know about that. What else do I got? I also like showing off things like custom variables. I'll go back to my services here real quick. Service status, MISC settings, custom variables. So here I've got a service name, I've got a service user, I've got a service password. Yes, that's my administrator password for Windows, don't hack me. And what this is going to do is when we see in the command that it's looking for a SVC underscore name, it's going to automatically populate it with NCPA. And that's going to pass that along to the script and say, Windows, restart this service called NCPA or SQL Server or whatever you might have. In fact, we can go and look at SQL Server, since that's the one that I showed you. Consistencies for the birds. So the service name for SQL Server is MS SQL Server. Happy. And so that sort of thing can get passed through to the commands via these custom variables. So since that is defined at the service, we just specify a service here, and then the actual variable name that we specified there, an SVC name. And then we've got all sorts of other things in here that we don't care about. A lot of things we do care about. NCPA token, port. You can see these have a host prefix, so these variables are defined at the host level rather than the service level. And I guess the real trick to event handlers is just understanding that they are scripts that are executed on the XI side, and they have to reach out to the remote host somehow in order to affect whatever it is you're monitoring. I find that's what people have the most problems with, and so that's why I created this kind of generic script to go out and modify a service via SSH or via WinRM or NCPA or what have you, so that depending on what you're using, if you're using a Windows machine or if you're using a Linux box, you should be able to restart a service with it. Happy. Does anyone have any questions about event handlers or restarting services? Anything I can riff on? Anything that we've seen so far?
Are these living in XI already?
There are some event handlers that exist in XI already. Check settings. So basically anything here that does not have the EH prefix is already in XI by default. And a lot of these, and I think actually all of them, are event handlers that are meant to affect services on the XI system. So like if the web server on XI shuts down, you can tell it to start back up right away. And I think that's one of the reasons why event handlers aren't more widely used, is because there's not like an easy button for people to say, you know, I've got this as a Windows box, monitoring this service, here's the name of it, here's some credentials to log in and restart a service if it's broken.
We need that easy button.
I like easy buttons.
Should get on the horn with the dev team.
I should.
Yeah.
I should. They might even listen to me.
Yeah, they might.
I'm sorry, what? Seamus brought something to my attention that I thought would be fun to call out in this talk. I remember learning about these earlier in my time here, but I had forgotten completely about them until he brought them up to me yesterday. Actions. Actions are pretty cool, very much like event handlers, except all of your code is in a little block here. And you can say this is going to be for hosts or services, might be for a specific host, might be for hosts in general. And what you would get, I don't want to do this on the demo environment because I don't want to change the demo environment too much. But what you would get is on either a host or a service, whatever you defined there, when you're looking at the detail, you would get an extra menu option here that would say, Google this problem or kick off a script to reboot the service or whatnot. That would be another way that you could create something similar to kind of do that first level remediation for you. Which is nice. We like
I've
that.
got some set up on 145.15 if you wanna actually show one. I was gonna in my NCPA talk, but
Oh, am I stealing your thunder?
that's okay.
I'm sorry, I
Which
wanted.
is funny, because one of the icons I chose is lightning, so it's all coming together.
Oh, sweet. Oh.
145.50, sorry.
50.
Yep.
Let me in.
Awesome,
Awesome.
super secure.
Yeah, we're
And then look for Spooler.
Spooler. Definitely a service that should not be running.
There you go. So you can start it with a wizard wand,
There it is.
stopped, and then if you do that and then force an immediate check, you'll also see how it's stopped.
Ooh, pretty. More help is available. Oh, so the spirit pool is not started successfully. Happiness. Let's come back to here. Force an immediate check. Survey says, hey, it's running.
And then you
So-
can zap it with lightning to stop it.
Oh, wow.
Oh, nice.
Pretty sweet, right?
You thought of everything, man. Holy cow, that's a great idea. That's one of the things that I typically would talk about in my demos, specifically with Print Spooler, because Print Spooler went through, I think, a week and a half of getting 0 day after 0 day after 0 day after 0 day. Jesus Christ, Print Spooler, what's wrong with you? And so it became best practice very quickly to just be like, okay, this server is not a print server. Okay, turn off the spooler. And one of the nice things about our monitoring tool is you can monitor a service and say, this service should not be running. If this service turns on, let me know. I will kill it. And that's nice. And now, as Seamus is showing us, and you can say, hey, I don't want this to be running, and stop it. Print Spooler has stopped. Have it opening all kinds of windows for us. And it's broken. Woo! I don't like Print Spooler. Let's see here. So that is kind of a quick and dirty rundown of event handlers and the actions button. I'll stop talking about the actions button now that I know Seamus is here. I just kind of wanted to show it off and give him some credit because I thought these two topics kind of aligned pretty well. But hopefully we'll get to hear more about it in the NCPA talk.
For people who are new, do you understand the context of what Michael's talking about? Does it make sense? Is this fitting into your mental map of Nagios? It's okay if it doesn't. That's half the point of this.
Yeah. We're all happy. No questions. Cool. Well, if you have questions, hit me up.
What
Yeah.
questions did you have when you first started on event handlers?
Why isn't everyone and their dog using this?
Yeah.
That was my big question. I came into Nagios Enterprises with previous Nagios Core experience. So I started here in support and I was like, oh, they've got an enterprise product. That's pretty cool. I'll probably still use Core at home because I'm a giant nerd. And that lasted for like 2 weeks and then I was like, can I have a license for home? Because XI is it's very rude. XI is awesome, whatever that train may say. XI is awesome.
What are,
Maybe the horn was voice saying it's awesome.
That's right.
You don't know that.
Yeah, that's right. It could be tooting XI's horn. Who knows?
Oh.
I'm here all week, folks.
What are some of the dangers of event handlers that people might want to consider before they go too nuts with them?
I like that. So dangers of event handlers. Cracking your knee. So first off is the knowing what state types are. So the state that a service is in, warning, critical, okay, important, but state type, whether it's soft or hard, also important to know and pass to your script so that your script can have the logic to only execute on those hard criticals. Another warning that I would give people are automating things like virtual machine disk expansion. That was, when I was telling people about event handlers and demos, that was a very common thing. People like, oh, so I could just have this, reach out to the Azure API, expand a disk and be happy. I'm like, yeah, you might want to slow down there, cowboy. Make sure your logic is sound, especially when you're using something like Azure, because those Azure bills can get aggressive. I suppose not just Azure specifically, all of those cloud providers. What else?
So for event handler, is it only for Nagios XI? Does it also have can you integrate this with log server, for example?
Ooh. Event handlers specifically are a Nagios XI thing, Nagios XI and Nagios Core. If we go hop over and look at log server, just log into log server. Log server's alerting feature actually has an execute custom command, execute script option. So this is kind of like event handlers, so I suspect this is why something like event handlers doesn't exist in log server. But if you can come up with a good use case for having them in log server,
Maybe if an IP address is keep logging in, failing attempts, a lot of attempts, maybe just stop that IP address.
oh yeah, like you were talking about in your demo earlier, or your presentation, what have you. So an IP address continuously failing to log in, you have an event handler reach out to the firewall and say, hey, block this IP.
Yeah.
That would absolutely be a great use for an event handler.
Should we call event handlers in log server event handlers? I mean, we do have the tiniest window of time before we put out a new major.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I would say that warrants more discussion. If event handlers should be in log server, what would the use cases be? That's one use case. What would the downsides be? What would the differences be between an event handler and just executing a custom script? Because this would be effectively like an event handler, but
Kind of different.
versus the value add of, oh, you've got log server and you want to automatically take action on something, pair it up with Nagios XI, you send that alert over to XI as a passive service check with NRDP, and then we sell more licenses.
All right, I like it.
Yeah, that would be the way to do it. Fire something to NRDP on XI if something happens in log server, and then have XI's event handler logic do the thing.
Do the thing. The benefits with doing that, aside from money, thanks for coming to my TED Talk, would be that you would have essentially one script, one event handler script in one spot where you have to worry about all the logic and whatnot and making sure it's executing under the right circumstances and what have you. So, yeah.
Does your script that you didn't show us, I noticed, are you embarrassed by it?
I am not embarrassed by it.
Does that handle passive?
It will work with passive checks, yeah. Service effector. Oh, maybe I should be embarrassed. Let's see here. So that's a problem. Yeah. So yeah, just 3 nested if statements and a trench code. That's all it is.
There you go. Welcome to Dev.
Welcome to Dev.
The if statements entrance.
So yeah, pretty much just looking for, if we're specifying an NCPA token, or if we're specifying an identity file for SSH, or if we're specifying a password, use WinRM, all kinds of good stuff. So, yeah, there you have it.
Where are you figuring out what state you're in?
What state I'm in, excuse me. I'm in Minnesota,
Uh-huh.
but perpetually I'm in the state of confusion. So we specify state and state type here, and then those are the first if statement. If state type is hard and critical or unknown or down. Probably the next version of this script would be letting it know when we want it to execute as kind of as a variable essentially that it could listen to. But
Okay.
right now it's hard coded. Don't judge me. I'll cry. Yeah, that is the script. This is out on GitLab. If anyone wants to play with it, play with event handlers.
I think GitLab access is
Oh yeah, I
not
suppose
universal in the first few weeks.
that's probably a good idea.
Yeah. And perhaps.
I'll just push to prod. It's fine. It's fine.
It's Nagios, and you can.
Okay. Any other questions?
I guess the only thing I can really come up with is, since I know that Nagios probably has different versions and such, if the Nagios does ever get like upgraded, would you have to rewrite any of your event handlers when it comes to that point?
Ooh, that's a good question. Typically not, as far as like actual Nagios itself, because what Nagios does, either for monitoring or for event handlers, things like that, it executes programs.
Right.
So pretty much it's just diving down to Linux and says, all right, Linux, see that file there? Execute it. I mean, run it. Don't kill it. No, it just kicks off scripts. So yeah, the only thing you'd have to worry about potentially is if we changed the NCPA API and said, okay, plugins live at this endpoint now, then you'd have to worry, but generally not.
Gotcha.
And then I think when you would upgrade, if you're going to upgrade in place, we wouldn't. The upgrade doesn't touch your plugins directory, or there's a number of things that simply don't get updated.
Gotcha.
So,
I should have asked, that's all.
yeah.
Another great thing along those lines is with Nagios XI, with a single license, you do get 3 instances of Nagios XI. You get production, test, and disaster recovery. So always test your upgrades before you push them to production. Because every company has a test environment. Some companies have a separate production environment. We have a test environment. Yeah, what else? I think that's it. Any questions, comments, heckles?
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.